Face the demons, put them to the test.
What is up, everybody?
Hey.
No, we have no technical issues going on our end.
Right. Welcome, everybody. It is Sunday, 8 o'clock.
It is
As the
Sunday,
doc would
8
say,
o'clock.
Do you know where your cryptids are? Right,
You
Doc?
beat me to it. You beat me to it. So it is February. It is Alien Abduction Month. We're just going on with more alien abductions.
Yes.
Tonight is Travis Walton.
Yes, another fascinating abduction, so to speak.
And we are going to be reading a chapter from the book High Strangeness, UFOs from 1960 through 1979 by Jerome Clark, because it is actually the most detailed information out there.
Oh, so these were actually, well, you know what? I guess if I would have paid attention to the page numbers at the bottom, tell you, it's nice. All right.
All right, so good old Mr. Jerome Clark in his books, he details a lot of alien abductions, UFO encounters, and he goes into great detail, which is why we're using his stuff. Because it's all here, it's all good, it's all detailed.
Yes.
We got 2 people watching. Be sure to pop in and say hi.
Yeah, one bit. I hope one is our one and only true viewer. Tammy.
I figured she would have chimed in. Maybe she's driving.
She could.
All right. Should be. Now we're down to 1. We scared somebody off.
Oh well, they'll be back.
They always come back. All right,
Yeah.
so, and I'm gonna read this verbatim because it has all the information. We'll just go ahead and put up whole picture of the crew. All right, so few abduction reports have generated so much controversy as an incident that began on Wednesday, November 5th, 1975, in a remote area of east central Arizona. 2 decades later, the dispute still rages. To all but a very few combatants, the stakes seem high. If Travis Walton and other participants are telling the truth, so it is assumed UFOs exist. UFO abductions are physical, not imaginary events, and UFOs are piloted by alien, presumably extraterrestrial beings. No wonder then that the Walton case has become one debunker's particular obsession. By now, after years of wildly conflicting claims and charges, a massive confusion surrounding this episode. Thus, the sorting of the reasonable conclusion from the unreasonable interference, much less the certifiable true from the undeniable false, is no simple task. It is not, however, entirely impossible. This account draws on many sources, including 2 books that have been written on the case. So, the disappearance on that night, and I got a picture of the work crew that was there that night. The disappearance. Travis Walton, 22 at the time, worked on a woodcutting crew in the Apache Sitz-Greaves National Forest, set in the high mountain area 15 miles south of Heber. The crew's foreman, Mike Rogers, had contracted with the U.S. Forest Service to thin out 1,277 acres of scrub brush at Turkey Springs. In practice, that meant the brush 6 inches or less in diameter was to be cleared with chainsaws. While half the crew wielded the saws, the other members dumped the debris in the slash piles behind them. Besides Walton and Rogers, the crew consisted of Ken Peterson, John Goulet, Steve Pierce, Alan Dallas, and Dwayne Smith. All were young men ranging from 17, Pierce, to 28, Rogers. All of them lived in Snowflake, a small Mormon town 33 miles east of Huber. Rogers had been doing contract work for the Forest Service for 9 years. The Turkey Springs contract was the most lucrative he had landed so far, but he was late in fulfilling it. He already had secured one extension, and he and his crew were working hard and long to catch up. Thus, the men labored until after sunset. When they quit for the day at 6 p.m., darkness had begun to fall. Darkness is falling, and we're still out cutting wood.
Yeah.
Have we not seen a horror movie?
Texas Chainsaw.
Don't go out after dark, people. People in Appalachian, they had it right. Don't go out after dark. All right, 10 minutes later, the exhausted workers piled in their battered pickup to begin the return trip to Snowflake. Rogers, Walton, and Peterson, the three non-smokers, sat in the front seat, the others already puffing away in the back. As Rogers drove, Walton sat by the right window, bouncing up and down as the vehicle, its shock absorbers long worn out, negotiated what passed for a road. It had gone no more than 200 yards before something unusual came to view. Either Walton or Dallas, accounts vary, saw it first. It was a glow shining through the trees on the right, about 100 yards ahead of them. As for the truck drove up the hill, the men fell silent. 40 yards away, the lights lit over the road, but a dense stand of trees still obscured its source. Then they passed a small clearing to the right, and the source was now clearly in view. It was a luminous, dish-shaped structure hovering 15 to 20 feet above a slash pile and casting a milky yellow glow through all the clearing. Approximately 100 feet from them, 20 feet wide and 8 feet high, it was divided by dark silver vertical lines longer than they were wide and a panel-like geometrical forms on its surface. A thin band with an outer protruding ring encircled the middle. Someone blurted out unnecessarily at this point, "That's a UFO."
Someone already knew. They were aware.
Somebody already knew what was going on.
E.T.
Rogers
came
was
home.
bringing the truck to a stop when Walton jumped. You never stop a car, so they stopped the car, right? Bringing the truck to a stop when Walton jumped out and walked briskly toward the UFO. Later, he would explain his action thus: "I was suddenly seized with the urgency to see the craft at close range. I was afraid the thing would fly away and I would miss a chance of a lifetime to satisfy my curiosity about it," unquote. When his co-workers, whose reactions to the UFO's presence ranged from intrigued to petrified, saw what he was doing, they shouted at him to get back. Walton paused for a moment, turned to glance at the truck, then reflected briefly on the wisdom of his course before deciding to proceed. In short order, he was standing on the perimeter of the dim halo of light the object was casting on the ground. He was only 6 feet away from being directly underneath the object. Mesmerized by the unbelievably smooth, unblemished surface of the curving hull, he at first did not realize that the UFO began to emit sounds. So here we got more sounds going on, just like in the Benny and the Barney Hills case, where there was sounds being emitted. The men in the truck were hearing low beeps. So here we go, more low beeps.
More beeps.
More beeps. Then Walton heard them too, only they were mixed somehow with the distant rumbling, an industrial sound reminiscent of a multitude of turbine engines starting up. The UFO started to wobble slowly. One side tipped toward him, then it wobbled faster and the sounds grew louder. By now thoroughly shaken, he ducked down behind a log which was jutting from the slash pile. He had to get away. He rose to his feet, and just as he was turning away from the UFO and toward the truck, he felt a, quote, numbing shock like a high-voltage electrocution, unquote. It hit particularly in his head and chest, but he could feel it all over his body. He heard a cracking or popping sound, and then he heard, saw, and felt no more. Walton did not know what hit him. Those looking on, however, saw a bluish-green beam strike him. He rose a foot in the air, his arm and legs outstretched, and shot stiffly back some 10 feet. All the while, it caught in the glow of the light. His right shoulder hit the earth, and his body sprawled limply on the ground. Rogers yeah. You just got your ass handed to you.
E.T. says no more.
Rogers and his crew were beside himself with fear at this point, and amid much shouting and cursing, they fled the scene, leaving their fallen comrade behind. Rogers was driving dangerously fast, though he could barely see the road. He was certain that the object was coming up behind him. A quarter of a mile later, he swerved to avoid hitting a pine tree. The truck slid sideways and stopped, struck crossways in a bulldozed pile of hard dirt. As one of his passengers screamed at him to get going, Rogers looked around and saw that the UFO was gone. The sky was quiet and empty of anything but stars. No one spoke for some moments. Then everyone began to talk at once, not necessarily coherently. Peterson and Rogers argued that they should go back to rescue Walton. At first, the others rejected the idea, but over the next few minutes, as the discussion continued outside the truck and nerves calm, they changed their minds. As they piled back in the truck, Rogers thought he saw a flash of white light in the woods, something like a streak ascending into the air. No one else saw it, but then none had been looking in that direction at the moment. Rogers believed he had witnessed the departure of the UFO. Rogers drove around in the gathered darkness in search of the spot where they had seen a UFO. There were a number of clearings and any number of slash piles in the vicinity, and one looked pretty much like another, so it was not easy. But eventually they found it. Rogers drove into the site. His headlights revealed nothing except the slash pile their companion had been standing beside. He shined a flashlight through the clearing, then he stepped out of the cab and his crew reluctantly followed. The panic they had suffered had made them feel almost physically ill. 20 minutes of searching failed to uncover any trace of Walton. As the enormity of the evening, strange events began to sink in. Some of the men, including Rogers, who considered Walton his best friend, wept. When they pulled themselves together, they headed for Huber and the initiation of police investigation. So we'll kind of cover up what we got on this one so far. I got the picture up there. It's a UFO, the beat-up truck.
Yeah. It almost makes you wonder. Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, just by some of the descriptions that they gave, if maybe the Benny and Barney and this are connected by the same aliens. You know, they weren't satisfied with the first abduction, they needed a second.
Well, I mean, if you go by the conspiracy that they've been doing this since the 50s and 60s, abducting humans for medical.
Kind of falls in
then
line.
It goes. Yeah, well, if you go with the other conspiracy, the U.S. government signed a contract with the aliens saying, okay, you can take X amount of humans a year.
No, there's a conspiracy of that? Seriously?
Yes, there is a conspiracy that us and the Greys are in contact, and the U.S. government has said that, yes, you may abduct our individuals for experimentation, but put them back where you found them.
Well, hey, like Tammy's saying, it's trying to find someone who's smart. I don't know back then.
They're all stopping for the car. All right, so then, 5 days. The authorities first heard the incident just after 7:30 when Navajo County Deputy Sheriff Chuck Ellison took a call from Ken Peterson, who said only that one of the crew was missing. Ellison met the group at the Heber Shopping Center. The men were in a highly emotional state. Two were crying, even as they related the bizarre and unbelievable UFO story. Ellison could not help reflecting that if they were acting, they were really good at it. Ellison quickly notified Sheriff Marlon Gillespie, who ordered him to wait with the crew until he can get to Heber. Gillespie was in Holbrook, 40 miles to the north. Within the hour, he and Under-Sheriff Ken Copeland arrived and commenced their own interview of the witnesses. Rogers, who wanted to get back to the site as quickly as possible, urged the sheriff's men to bring bloodhounds to the aid of tracking, but none were available. Pierce, Smith, and Goulet said they had no desire to return, and so they went off in Rogers' truck to Snowflake to notify Rogers' wife of what had happened. At the site, the 6 men stalked the clearing and surrounding area with flashlights and a searchlight mounted atop a four-wheel Jeep. The understandably suspicious law enforcement officers focused a part of their attention on the trail that would have led Walton from the pickup to the slash pile. There were no prints in the hard ground. The pine needles that covered the clearing floor looked undisturbed. There were no broken twigs, there were no burn marks or other unusual effects in the slush pile or in the trees. Nothing, in short, to back up the story. When last seen, Walton had been wearing no more than a light jacket. As the evening progressed, the temperature plummeted. If Walton was somewhere out in the woods, the bitter cold could represent a direct threat to his life. Ellison went back to Heber to collect additional searchers, but even with the further manpower, the mystery of Walton's whereabouts remained unsolved. Finally, around midnight, Rogers remarked that Travis's mother, Mary Walton Kellett, ought to be notified. She was staying in a remote cabin on a ranch in Bear Springs, about 10 miles in the woods to the east. Kellett lived there part of the year and spent winters at her home in Snowflake. She was shortly to return to town. Rogers and Under Sheriff Copeland set off to see her. They showed up to her door around 1 a.m. Mrs. Kellett knew Rogers, of course, but had not met Copeland before. Still visibly shaken, Rogers related the circumstances of her son's disappearance. Apparently not quite comprehending what he was telling her, Kellett asked him to repeat the story. Then after some moments' pause, he asked her if he had told anyone else. Copeland, who had expected Kellett to respond more dramatically, did not like the way she was acting, and he, as well as later critics of the case, would make much of Kellett's apparent composure, interpreting it as evidence that as a party to the hoax, she knew her son was all right and hidden away somewhere. In fact, those who knew Kellett far better than Copeland would insist that a hard life, she had raised 6 children on her own under difficult economic circumstances, had long taught her not to fly to pieces in the face of crisis and tragedies. It was part of her personal code not to display emotion before strangers, yet in the days ahead, as events overwhelmed her, she would show emotion before friends, acquaintances, and strangers alike, a fact that would go unmentioned in debunking treatments of the Walton episode. So everybody's kind of looking at this case, and they're already getting their doubts.
Right. And then going and talking to his mother, and she really didn't have a response. It's like, oh, really? Kind of, I would have thought something was up. I would have thought, honestly, something was up with her if she acted like that. If I came to her door and said, hey, your son's missing, we think this is what had happened, and not really gotten the reaction you would expect to get from a mother.
Yeah, I mean it's a thing. At 3 a.m., Kellett called Dwayne Walton, the second oldest of the Walton sons, and the one who, owning to strength of personality, typically took charge when circumstances called for it. Dwayne left his house in Glendale, a western suburb of Phoenix, almost immediately. By morning, yet more volunteers, including local Forest Service personnel, had joined the search. The 3 crew members who had stayed away the night before had not returned in the morning, so again, only Rogers, Petersons, and Dallas participated in a renewed effort. Already, the sheriff's men and other area police officers were entertaining dark suspicions that the UFO tale was a story concocted to cover something far more sinister, such as murder. Murder! But at the same time, Mike Rogers, who presumably would have been in his hypothetical murder plot, was as insistent as Dwayne Walton, who presumably would not have been, that the search to be continued. The two of them showed up together at Sheriff Gillespie's office on Saturday in an explosively angry mood. They had just been to the site, they said, and had detected not a soul. The search resumed that afternoon. This time included a helicopter, riders on horseback, and 4-wheel jeeps. That day also brought the outside world in this obscure corner of America, along with hordes of reporters and curiosity seekers. UFO instigator Fred Sylvanus showed up, sought out Mike Rogers, and interviewed him in the late afternoon and early evening. Dwayne Walton, who sat in on the interview, reportedly interjected with comments of his own. These comments would come back to haunt him and take a permanent place in the controversy surrounding the case. Dwayne claimed to have seen a UFO almost identical to what they described for a period of about 30 minutes in broad daylight about 12 years ago. He went on to assert, Travis and I discussed this many, many times at great length. We both said that we would immediately get as directly under the object as was physically possible The opportunity would be too great to pass up at any cost except death if we were to make contact with them. Travis reformed just as we said we would, and has received the benefits for it, unquote. Not nearly so sure, Rogers said, quote, "You hope he has?" Unquote. Dwayne said he was sure his brother would be brought back because they don't kill people. He and Mike denied, however, they were UFO buffs. I follow it like I do a lot of things, Dwayne said. So now we've got even more controversy on the case. Because Travis and his brother have talked about if they saw a UFO, what they do. And apparently they saw something like this 12 years earlier. So if you're a skeptic, and this has already put in a lot of conspiracy and controversy into the mix. Especially if you're saying, oh yeah, we saw a UFO 12 years ago. And if we ever saw one again, this is what we do. Okay, later in the interview, Rogers expressed concern about another sort of problem. This contract that we have is seriously behind schedule. In fact, Monday, November 10th, the time is up. We haven't done any work on it since Wednesday because of this thing. Therefore, it won't be done. I hope they take that into account, this problem. He then returned to a prominent theme in this interview, his frustrations with what he saw as less than adequate search for his missing friend. Quote, "Nobody seemed that interested in searching that extensively. No bloodhounds were brought in, and now it's too late, and I've been mentioning it every day," unquote. Dwayne also complained bitterly about the lackadaisical nature of the search. It certainly seems, Sylvanus thought, that if the two were genuinely concerned about Travis, yet at the same time, Dwayne's remarks about the UFOs and the intentions of their occupants made him uneasy. So did Mike express concerns about the lateness of his Forest Service contract. As would soon become clear, the foundations of an alternative interpretation of the case have been laid. So everybody's really not helping their case of, hey, our buddy got snatched by a UFO, and they're all saying the wrong things, where the authorities are now wondering, did they actually kill Travis?
Mm-hmm. And the fact, too, that they're behind in this contract, so they're making something up to hopefully get an extension on this contract.
I'm gonna skip a little bit ahead because there's a lot of pages here. So they set all the guys down one by one to do lie detector tests. Because now they're not kind of wondering. While reporters milled up and around the outside, each of the witnesses underwent 4 20-minute tests, which consisted of variously phrased versions of 4 basic questions. And these are the 4 questions that these men were asked on their lie detector tests. Did you cause Travis Walton any serious physical harm last Wednesday afternoon? 2. Do you know if Travis Walton was physically injured by some other member of your work crew last Wednesday? 3. Do you know if Travis Walton's body is buried or hidden somewhere in the Turkey Springs area? 4. Did you tell the truth about actually seeing a UFO last Wednesday when Travis Walton disappeared? So each of the 6 men answered no to questions 1, 2, and 3, and they each answered yes to question number 4. The test results were conclusive with Gillette, Smith, Peterson, Rogers, and Pierce. The test results on Dallas were inconclusive. Based on the polygraph chart tracing, it is the opinion of this examiner that Gillette, Smith, Peterson, Rogers, and Pierce were being truthful when they answered these relevant questions. These polygraph examinations proved that these 5 men did see some object that they believed to be a UFO, and that Travis Walton was not injured or murdered by any of the men on that Wednesday. If an actual UFO did exist, and the UFO is a man-made hoax, 5 of these men had no prior knowledge of a hoax. No such determination can be made of the 6 men whose test results were inconclusive. So now this is 5 days late. This is 5 days later after Travis's disappearance. Close to midnight, a phone rang in Taylor, a small town 2 or 3 miles south of Snowflake and 30 miles east of Heber. When Grant Neff took the call, he heard a faint, confused-sounding voice mutter, "This is Travis. I'm in a phone booth at the Heber gas station and I need help. Come and get me." So Grant Neff was married to Travis's sister Allison, told the caller he had the wrong number. From this point of view, Neff had no reason to take the message seriously. The voice did not sound like Travis's. For one thing, for another, the Waltons and the relatives had already been subjected to too many prank calls. But just as he was preparing to hang up, Neff heard the voice screaming, the hysteria. Sounding genuine. "It's me, Grant," the caller said. "I'm hurt and I need help badly. You come and get me." It was Travis, all right. Neff promised to get Dwayne to be in Huber as soon as possible. So what we got is he coming back 5 days later in Heber.
You just can't give him a little ride to Heber.
Took him for 5 days.
Poked and prodded and yeah. Said he ain't worth their time and brought him back.
All right, so I'm just going to skip over. I mean, a lot of this just kind of goes into a lot more detail of the play-by-play of everything. So Neff drove a Snowflake, picked up Dwayne, who had not left the sheriff's office. Then they gone to the mother's house. Grant Neff and Dwayne Walton found Travis hunched over in a second of 3 phone booths at the service station at the Heber's outskirts. Though conscious, he seemed to be in shock. He had 5 days' worth of beard on his face, and he looked thinner than had he been when last seen. Later, members of the family would claim that he weighed 165. Weighed not long after his return, he was 154. Clothed in the Levi's shirt and jeans and cotton shirt he had been wearing at the time of his disappearance, he was shivering in the 18-degree cold. On the way back to Snowflake, Travis spoke vaguely of encountering creatures with eyes that had terrified him. He was still frightened. He was startled to hear that 5 days had passed. He thought it had only been a couple of hours. When he heard that, he shook his head and ceased speaking altogether. At his mother's house, he took a bath and drank quantities of water. When he tried to eat cottage cheese and pecan cookies, he threw up. Dwayne decided that someone in his brother's fragile condition needed to be shielded, at least for now, from harassment by police officers, journalists, and busybodies. Travis himself was saying over and over again, almost as if reciting something from memory, "Don't let the police know I'm here. I've got to have a doctor. Don't let the police know. Give me some medical help." But the police already knew, or at least suspected, that something was up. At 2:30 a.m., Gillespie got a tip from a phone company informant that someone had called the Neffs from the Heber gas station booth. Gillespie alerted Deputy Ellison and Lieutenant E.M. Romo, who went to the station and began to dust for prints. There were no prints at all on the phone in the third booth, perhaps because no one had used it since the servicemen had emptied the till and wiped the instrument clean. The other two had prints, but as far as Ellison and Romo could determine in the cold and dark, none was Walton's. Meanwhile, officers on duty in the early morning hours were looking for cars owned by the Walton family members. Deputy Glenn Flake, who had been positioned in Snowflake at the junction of Highway 77 and 277, so we can see Walton vehicles heading to or from Taylor or Heber, saw nothing. In due course, the sheriff told him to drive over to Mary Kellett's house. Travis was there, but Deputy Flake would not know that till later. When he pulled up, he observed lights on inside the house. Dwayne was in the front yard, siphoning gas from a friend's truck. He explained that he had driven from Holbrook to Lake to refill his tank for the trip to Glendale. He did not add that Travis would be accompanying him there, and Flake asked no other questions. So eventually, Dwayne takes his brother to meet William Spaulding, head of Ground Saucer Watch, for an interview. Travis is still asking for things. They put him underneath hypnotherapy. They finally got him to a doctor, so they got out checked out, and here were the medical report would note there were no bruises or evidence of trauma, except for a 2 millimeter red spot in the crease of his right elbow, which was suggestive of a needle puncture. However, it was not overlying any significant blood vessel. He denied being aware of his presence and did not know what it might be due to. Urinalysis, volume 560 cc, normal with good concentration. However, there was no acetone present, which is unusual considering that any person who is without adequate nutrition for 24 to 48 hours will break down his own body fat storage, which should result in ketones being accreted into the urine. The absence of ketones in his urine, considered a 10-pound weight loss, is difficult to explain. Trust me, everybody, there's a lot here.
Yeah. So he's drinking lots of water. He uses 10 pounds. Yeah.
No apparent bruises or injuries. Which would be weird, being the fact that you just got thrown 10 feet across the forest.
Right.
You got no bruises, but you got thrown.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 5 days being gone, they wouldn't heal that quick.
All right, so eventually they come along and they give Travis a polygraph test. Tammy says it was a gentle probing with loving care. Is there really a loving probe? A gentle probing? All right, so they hook him up. They do their testing. McCarthy announced, and I quote, "Travis, your responses are deceptive," and declared that he had failed the polygraph test. Flabbergasted, Travis protested there must be some mistake. He asked for another test. McCarthy refused. "There's no need to go any further," he said. "I've got my answers." He concluded his official report thus. His reactions on the control test were normal. He appeared to be lucid, and prior to testing, he stated that he understood each of the questions to be asked and that he would answer each with a yes or no. It was obvious during the examination that he was deliberately attempting to distort his respiratory pattern. Based on his reactions on all charts, it is the opinion of this examiner that Walton, in concert with others, is attempting to perpetrate a UFO hoax, and that he has not been in any spacecraft. Our conclusion, which is absolute, is that this young man is not lying and that there is no collusion involved. The full test results show that he really believes these things, that he is not lying. He really believes that he was abducted by a UFO. Dr. Rosenbaum goes on to say, but my evaluation of the boy's story is that although he believes this is what happened, it was all in his mind. I feel that he suffered from a combination of imagination and amnesia, a transitory psychosis, that he did not go on a UFO, but simply was wandering around during the period of the disappearance. But I'm unable to account for 5 witnesses having the same basic story and passing lie detector tests about it. So basically, it's just lie detector test after lie detector test after lie detector test. And they're all saying the same thing, that Travis is making this up. It's all in his brain. We have George Pfeiffer, who also gave another one. Pfeiffer concluded as follows. It is the opinion of the examiner that Dwayne Walton has answered all questions truthfully, according to what he believes to be true regarding this incident, and he has not attempted to be deceptive in any area. After careful analysis of the polygrams produced, there are no areas left unresolved, and it is the opinion of this examiner that Travis Walton has answered all questions in a manner that he himself is firmly believing to be truth regarding the incident commencing 11/5 1975. So there's like a lot of controversy on this guy.
Right. But I mean, through to today, he's still maintaining what has happened to him. I mean, it's. I mean, he truly believes he was abducted, had his little probing, and he's pretty damn adamant about it. And it seems like a lot of people just don't want to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, now, okay, so Travis Walton's bit on the UFO is that he was medically examined.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to get out of his little cocoon and go around the ship and look at things. He was talking to aliens. He had run into a human-looking hybrid that was not receptive to what he was saying and the questions that he was asking.
Right. A little more on the aggressive side, maybe?
Could be. All right, so as the story he would relate consistently over the years went, he returned to consciousness in a hospital-like room. His whole body ached, his vision was blurred, and he felt weak and thirsty. A metallic taste filled his mouth. Above him, a luminous rectangle, 3 feet by 1.5 and composed of seamless metal, gave off a soft white light. A plastic rocker-shaped device extended from his armpits to his ribcage. The air was wet and heavy, and he had some difficulty breathing. Still, his first impression was that he was in a conventional earthly hospital, even if he could not understand why the nurses had not removed his clothing. Travis saw 3 figures dressed in loose-fitting orange one-piece suits standing near him, one to his right, the other 2 to his left. As his vision cleared, he recoiled in shock and horror as he realized these were not human beings. He would describe them this way, and I quote, "They were shorter than 5 feet, and they had very large bald heads, no hair. Their heads were domed, very large. They looked like fetuses. They had no eyebrows, no eyelashes. They had very large eyes, enormous eyes, almost all brown except much white in them. The creepiest thing about them were those eyes. Oh man, those eyes, they just stared through me. Their mouths and ears and noses seemed really small, maybe just because their eyes were so huge. Their hands had 5 fingers. Beings looked frail with soft and marshmallowy skin. Travis staggered to his feet and shouted at the beings. He struck out and pushed one of them into another. From the ease with which he was able to knock them back, he deduced that they weighed relatively little. Then he grabbed a cylinder tube off a shelf, which jutted from the wall. Assuming from its appearance that the tube was made of glass, he tried to break the top off so he could threaten the beings with its jagged edges, but the object proved unbreakable. Nonetheless, Travis waved it threateningly in their direction, keeping their distance. They just stopped and kind of thrust their hands out like they meant no or stop or I don't know what. Unquote. After a short tense standoff, the beings turned around and exited quickly out of the door immediately behind them. Shortly thereafter, Travis himself went out of the room and headed left into a curving corridor 3 feet wide. In short order, he came to an open room on his right. It was round, domed, and apparently empty of anything, except a high-backed metal chair in the middle. The chair was supported by a single center leg, since his back was to him. Travis could not be sure that someone was sitting in it, but he decided to take a chance. Moving slowly and quietly, with his back pressed up against the wall, he positioned himself so that he can glimpse the chair's occupant if there was one. There wasn't. When he stepped toward the chair, the light began to fade. He stepped back and the light returned. He stepped forward again and suddenly was surrounded by stars. He could not tell whether the wall, ceiling, and floor had become transparent, revealing the deep space through which the craft presumably was moving, or starlight, points of light that had been projected planetarium fashion on all surrounding surfaces. Except for the fact that the walls were still vaguely visible, quote, the effect was like sitting in a chair in the middle of space, unquote. Travis would write, Walton, 1978. So he's kind of getting a glimpse of everything that's going on in this thing.
Right.
All right, there was a panel of buttons on the right armrest, along with a screen with vertical black lines. The left armrest held a lever. Travis pushed a couple of the buttons, but nothing happened. Then he sat on the chair and pushed the lever forward. The black lines on the screen moved and the stars started rotating, though keeping their relatively positions all the while. Frightened and disoriented, Travis pulled his hand off the lever, which then returned to its normal position on its own. The stars stopped rotating and were frozen in their new position. Soon he was fooling with the lever again and now more radically pushing it in all directions, hoping that he could open up one of the doors whose thin rectangular outlines he thought he could see on the wall in front of him. The stars again whirled around. Travis let go once more, fearing that if he kept playing with the instruments, he might cause some real damage. Yeah, if this was during the time of Roswell, there would be our explanation of why we got a crashed UFO. Hey, I wonder what these buttons do.
Right.
And then the aliens were just like, hey, you wrecked our ship. Get the hell out. Why is it always people got to be pushing buttons? I don't know about you, man. I'm in an alien vessel. I'm not pushing any buttons.
Yeah, hell no.
I don't know what it's going to do. Hey, look, I'm above the Earth. I wonder what this button does. Boom. Well, there was an Earth. Chaos reigns.
Absolutely.
He got to his feet and again walked over to the wall. The stars faded away. The room lightened up. Travis ran his fingers along the outline of what he thought might be a closed door and walked back to the chair. As he was standing beside it, he heard sounds and looked to the open doorway behind the chair. There he was starting to see a human figure wearing a transparent bubble helmet over his head. Shock followed as Travis reflected that he was among his own kind. The man looked like a deep, tan, muscular Caucasian, around 6 feet 2 inches tall, perhaps 200 pounds. He had sandy blonde hair long enough to cover his ears, and he was dressed in a tight-fitting bright blue coverall suit with a black band or belt across the middle. He wore black boots. In his excitement, Travis failed to appreciate just how odd the man's eyes looked. A strange, bright golden hazel. They were not really the eyes of a human being. The figure motioned to Travis, who approached with a series of frantic gestures, to which only the response was a tolerant grin. Travis thought the man had nothing because his helmet blocked out his hearing. Maybe they were going someplace where the man would remove the helmet, then they could talk. Led by the arm, Travis was taken in the curving, narrow hallway. The man in the lead until they came to a closed door to the right. It opened into a tiny medical cubicle of a room, which the two entered as the door closed again behind them. Travis asked where they were going, but his companion again ignored the question. They then entered an enormous room, which Travis thought of as an airlock or a hangar. Inside it, the air was fresh and cool with gently flowing breezes, almost as if they were outside, and the light was as bright as sunlight. Travis ascended a short, steep ramp and looked around him. He would recall the ceiling was sectioned in alternating rectangles of dark metal and those that gave off light like the sun shining through a translucent panel. The alteration of the light and dark panels reminded me of a checkerboard. The ceiling itself curved down to form one of the larger walls in the room. The room was shaped like 1/4 of a cylinder laid on its side. So basically, they just get out of another craft. They're in it. They walk out of one craft into a bigger craft, to a mothership.
That's pretty much what it sounds like.
And he's pushing buttons.
Well,
that mothership should be lucky he didn't.
I'm just sitting here fascinated at the fact that, okay, he's up in this UFO, and then it kind of goes back to the Betty and Barney thing, you know. They're breathing that fresh air. If they're aliens, you wouldn't think they'd be able to breathe fresh air necessarily, maybe? but they're being accommodating to the humans.
Well, I mean, if we go back to the entire business of they're not allowed to kill people, you know, hey, we can kidnap 10 a year as long as we take them back in one piece.
I don't know.
It,
Okay.
it's a Hilton hotel and stars.
Frequent air miles. You buy one, you get one free.
So basically, they walk around the Travis and his buddy walk around the spacecraft for a while. They're talking about there's a bunch of other ships in this docking bay. It goes on to describe the floor is a rubber-like material to a door to a hangar room.
Mm-hmm.
Travis finally says, "When do we get to go home?" Travis wanted to know, "Where are we going now?" As usual, his companion acted as if he had not heard him. They finally came to a pair of doors at the end of the hallway. As they slid silently open, Travis saw two men and a woman sitting in a room. They were dressed like his companion and even bore a family sort of resemblance to him. Like him, they were good-looking and perfectly featured. The woman, who appeared to be wearing no makeup, wore her hair longer than the men did. Three were not wearing helmets, which gave Travis false encouragement. "Would somebody please tell me where I am?" he asked desperately. The beings only looked at him with pleasant expressions on their face, and then the helmeted man set him down in a chair before leaving through another door, entering a corridor and departing to the right.
Damn, how many doors does this thing have?
Oh, a lot! So basically, I'm just going to skip a little bit. So he's sitting there and he's talking to these other humans without a thing. Once, so they hold him down on a table. Once he was down, he noticed that the woman had in her hand something that looked like one of those clear, soft plastic masks. Only there were no tubes connected to it. The only thing attached to it was a small black golf ball-sized spear. She placed it over his mouth and nose, and as Travis prepared to rip it off his face, he lost consciousness. Next thing he knew, Travis was lying on his back on the highway just outside Heber, 10 miles from the place where he had seen the lights in the woods in the darkness. And we're going to quote, "One of those round craft hovering about 4 feet over the highway. It was hovering there for a second. I looked up just as the light went out, like a hatch closing, or was just a light going out. A white light just went off on the bottom of it. Craft was dark and it wasn't giving off any light at all." So Travis ran to the gas station, tried the first 3 phone calls. It didn't work. It didn't work, and he panicked. Maybe all of them were out of order, but he got through on the second, and his brother-in-law Grant left answered. By 1975, ufologists had collected and investigated a small number of abduction reports. The first case came to their attention was the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case, a 1961 close encounter whose abduction aspect subsequently recovered through hypnosis. First saw print in 1965 and followed the year after. So, October 20th, 1975, NBC broadcast a docudrama, The UFO Incident on the Hill case. Klaus and other critics would make much of this. Travis insisted neither he nor any other witnesses had seen the show. In any event, there was not much similarity between the Hill story and the Waltons. So basically, they're trying to connect the two and say, well, there was a TV show about this, so maybe he's getting everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he's making it up.
I could see that, yeah.
Now, as we said before, this case, poor Travis Walton's got controversy that has surrounded him since day one that this happened. They talk about other abduction cases where the descriptions were about the same. The beings were about 5 feet tall and very much like us, except their heads were larger and hairless. Their ears were very small, eyes a little larger than ours, nose small, and the mouth had very thin lips. Lorenzen, 1977. And that was Air Force Sergeant Charles Moody reported a close encounter on August 13th, 1975 in New Mexico. So that was his description of the aliens after the fact in 75.
Right.
So that was August 13th, 1975.
So that was before the Travis Hill
Before the Travis Walton.
or
Because
Travis,
Travis
Walton,
was
excuse me.
November 5th, 1975 was Travis. August 13th, 1975 was Sergeant Charles Moody. But apparently they had not they did not publish that information in anything yet. So So basically, they go through everything. Travis is returned. There's a lot of controversy. A lot of people are not buying the story. Since we are in the last 10 minutes, in a Skeptic's Corner, we always ask that one question: Could they make money off of this? And make a living off of the story.
Well, he did write a book and the movie, but I don't think he really made much off of it. I mean, he's still talking about it to this day.
Yeah, he's still discussing it, but he did write the Walton experience, which details his entire experience with all this. He's still going around the UFO circuit. He's still talking.
Right. And kind of just, like the Betty and Barney, when I was watching some of the documentaries and whatnot on this, you could tell in their voice, that they actually believe what had happened to them. That frightening tone in people's voices, when something like that or, traumatic happens with them. I'd be all right. I could say he's not making a ton of money. I think I could believe him that he actually was jacked from this earth for 5 days. I know.
I know most skeptics would definitely sit there and say, "Yeah, this guy, he's famous for this now."
Yeah,
but also like Benny and Barney Hill, they did not want it to be famous. They did not want to carry this over. Barney Hill was very much.
They wanted to stay out of the limelight. Barney wanted to just kind of say, no, not really, it happened, or didn't want to believe it, so to speak.
And I
mean, he has like 6 coworkers or friends, that were there as a witness. And, they're not getting nothing from this. So, I mean, he's going on tours. He's doing all this. They ain't doing nothing. I think they just want... I would maybe say his brother, Dwayne, he speaks up frequently. But the others don't you don't hear anything from the others about it, and I just don't think they're making anything. So what would their reasoning to call shenanigans?
Well, I think with Travis, it's been a matter of defending his name this entire time. This has happened. He wants people to just believe him. I think that the crew basically, they were dragged through the mud.
Mm-hmm.
Lie detector tests, a lot of lie detector tests. Hey, why did you kill him? Why did you kill him? Why did you kill him? Why did you kill him?
Then I mean, with the lie detector test, you had 5 that passed and 1 was inconclusive.
Right.
Why was that? Why was that 1 inconclusive?
Because Dallas had a criminal record.
Oh,
it came out much, much later that Dallas had a criminal record, and he was really nervous talking to everybody.
That's right. Forgot that little tidbit.
Yeah. So the rest of the guys that are still here, we've lost one of them in 2008, and I think 2004. We lost 2 of the originals.
Okay.
But I know that on HBO Max, there is a documentary on the Travis Walton, and they dive real deep in it. And they actually bring all the guys back on the camera. Mm-hmm. And their reasoning for just disappearing was like, for years and months, this happened. We tried to tell everybody this is what happened. We were told that we had killed him, that we were doing this. And these people were generally just like, you know what, we're tired of defending ourselves. That's all we're doing is defending ourselves day in and day out.
Right.
So now they kind of feel like they've got a little bit more justice on their side where they can come out and speak about it and say, listen, this is what happens. We don't feel that we deserved all the hatred that we got. Which actually, a lot of people will, upon seeing a UFO abduction, again, we got Betty and Barney Hill. Betty continued talking till the day she died.
Right. I have a feeling Travis here will do the same.
Well, I'm sure that because of the fact that he's been called out so many times, he's just like, listen, this is what really happened. I mean, if you ever see him on a newscast, he almost looks like he's just tired of defending himself.
Yeah, I mean, even in this picture you got up here, he kind of looks a little tired and disgusted or drained to constantly be thrown over the coals.
Yeah. But so I'm going to say that I believe that something really did happen to him just by the look in his eyes.
Yeah. They say, the eyes are the windows to the soul. You could tell. You could see it in his eyes. Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, like I got to meet Bob Gimlin, and I asked him just straight out. I said, did you really see what you saw? And he looked me dead in the eyes with a firm handshake for an old man. That was a firm-ass handshake. And he said, yes, I will go to my grave. That is what I saw. So I believe Travis saw something. I believe Betty and Barney Hill had an abduction case.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someday they will all get the
recognition that they deserve.
Betty and Bart, the recognition, the belief, and be able to breathe a little bit easier. But
right.
So next week is going to be a real interesting one.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Communion, the book, the movie by Whitney Schreiber, and his abduction cases.
Well,
And-
so I got to go watch a movie?
It's all right. It's got Christopher Walken in it. You'll enjoy it.
All right, then.
That's Christopher Walken. How could you not enjoy Christopher Walken?
Hey.
Until that time, everybody, we will see you all next week. Be sure to hug your cryptids. Bring them in from the outside. They deserve love too.
No.
This is the doc,
This is the King James.
and we will see you all next week at the same time. Bye bye.